Alpha team report.
What's happening, Heather? Green light the asset.
Sir, I need more time.
We have no time. Are you going to give that order or not?
Sir, please.
You're too naive to see the truth. There's no bringing in Bourne.
We will defend these police officers.
Listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to pick the laws. We enforce them. But at the end of the day, each and every member is to go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is September 1st, 2016. It is also the start of the football season. A bunch of games on tonight that I will not be watching. Actually, if UNLV is on TV, I don't know if they are. They're playing like Jacksonville State or somebody, or Jackson State or one of the CS teams. I will be watching that after the show. I know it started at 7, so they should just destroy them. But I'd like to see how they do and who they start at quarterback and whatever. But anyway, we are coming to you live from Las Vegas in Nevada. I'm wearing my I don't know if this is the home or away. I think home is colors and away is white. I don't know. I have my white Colin Kaepernick jersey on. And maybe I'll take a picture from the studio and post that later. But thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and you can listen live on Spreaker.com and nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, and to the archives immediately following the show on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. On Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote self-ownership and the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedoms, exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. And we are happy to hear from you, and you can reach us by phone at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. You can also reach us via Skype at Nonpartisan Liberty for all one word. And you can check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, which has all the contact information, the number, and Skype username, as well as original articles, archives, and other things. And you can check out the series, the War on Drugs series, which actually pertains a lot to what we're talking about today. And I may add an article on today's show to there. I think there's 6 articles so far. I've been bad the last few weeks. I haven't added anything, but by the end, it's going to be a pretty big bunch of articles in that series there. So today we are going to talk all about Kratom, or Kratom is what I've heard other people pronounce it. I always pronounced it Kratom. I think it sounds better, but the masses, or the majority of people on YouTube, pronounce it Kratom. So however you want to call it, I guess it doesn't really fucking matter. But anyway, the DEA have on their own. Now, they need the Attorney General to approve, but I'm assuming the Attorney General has already said that they have approved this. It doesn't say on their they issued a document, and I'm going to be referring a little to that because it's a bunch of bullshit. And it mentions the Attorney General, but I'm assuming they wouldn't go through all of this if they didn't already know the Attorney General was going to approve it. So it's pretty fucked up. So those who don't know what Kratom is, first of all, it's a plant. And from what I understand, that what you get when you get Kratom is totally, it's just the plant ground up into powder. That's all it is. I don't believe there's any additional additives to it. There may be something to get it powdery or something like that, but it's nothing that, you know, when you talk about drugs like cocaine and heroin, it goes through a whole big process. When you talk about Kratom, it's similar to marijuana. I mean, they're just taking the leaves and, you know, grinding them up, really, and smoking them or breaking them up. And that's pretty much what happens, from what I understand with Kratom, is it's a powder, but it's like its leaves turned into powder. And then you can either put it in a tea, you can put it in water, you can swallow it, I guess, like whole, but they sell pills, actually, of Kratom at smoke shops. So you can go and just buy the pills, and that's the easiest way, really, to take it, as opposed to I've had it before. I've never had it in tea or water or anything like that. So I guess this was 2 days ago, Tuesday, the DEA announced that they were going to move it to a Schedule I drug. So you have something now that's been legal forever. It's never been illegal, but that's been sold for, I became aware of it a couple years ago, and I've seen videos that are on YouTube, that have been on YouTube, where it will say, you know, 1 month or 1 year, or that for years, like in excess of 5 years have been on YouTube. So this is not anything new, and it's totally natural. And it's like I said, it's similar to marijuana. And I think really, and I'll go into the details of this, but there's too many people using it and getting a benefit out of it. So once something starts to build a following, and it may possibly cut into other things, the government has to go out and say, oh, we need to ban this. And the DEA is essentially, it might as well be the president, because the DEA is under the administrative branch. All the agencies are, from what I understand. Maybe there's an agency specific to Congress that has I mean, there's so many fucking agencies now. There's 17,000 law enforcement agencies alone, something like that. But I think that includes, you know, police stations and whatever. But it's ridiculous that they can just on their own, and with the approval of the Attorney General, it doesn't have to get voted on. There's no law that has to be passed. They can give you 30 days notice and say, hey, we're shutting down your business. Because there's businesses that, of course, sell Kratom. Now, most of them that I'm aware of although I didn't look at a lot of the websites. They sell other stuff too, so I don't know if the other stuff is all related to Kratom or it's stuff that can keep them in business if they stop selling Kratom. And of course, smoke shops, it's one small product. It's not going to shut down a smoke shop, but it may be a good source of income for them. But I don't think it's too big at when it comes to smoke shops. I know that some of them don't even sell it, and the ones that do, they don't seem to keep a lot on hand. So I think the biggest distribution is online, that there are a bunch of websites, and that's where the majority of people get it. It's the cheapest way to get it, because I know when I seen it at smoke shops, you know, it's more expensive and it's in pill form, but it's more expensive than if you got it online. Pretty much the same thing with everything is more expensive if you buy it at the store compared to online. And then most of when it comes to something like Kratom, they don't have a physical presence. So, of course, that is going to factor into the fact that you don't have to pay tax on it. So it makes it even cheaper as well. So I believe the majority of people would say, and even in videos that I've watched, because I've watched videos a while ago on it, and of course I watched some more the past couple of days, but the ones that I've watched in the past, everyone, you know, pretty much got it online, you know, unless I guess you need it right away or want it right away. But they have overnight, and a lot of them have free overnight and stuff like that. But if there's sites that are selling just Kratom, they're going to have to shut down. Now, there's a petition, whitehouse.gov, that I had posted, and I would recommend people sign. I don't think that's going to make a fucking difference. And now it's going to make anybody who has this is now a criminal, who could be hit with, I don't know, because marijuana is Schedule 1 too, and you just get a ticket in some states for only having a certain amount. So I don't know. It said in what they issued that, you know, it would be the penalties of a Schedule 1 drug. Well, heroin's also a Schedule 1 drug too, and the penalties of possession of heroin are a lot different than the penalties of possession of marijuana. So if you're looking at it that way, I don't know what they would do, but it's just fucking ridiculous. It's another thing that the government is doing to take more control. Of course, it benefits the DEA. The fact that the DEA has any say in what drugs are illegal and what drugs are not, and it's not even I wouldn't even consider it a drug. They're making plants illegal. But the fact that they have any say in that is ridiculous because it's a benefit to them. So when you look at it, it gives them more business in a way, meaning that now they have another drug that they can go after. At the same time, they can, you know, go after all, like they did this with synthetic marijuana. They actually even did it with places that stopped selling it when they made it illegal. So they took synthetic marijuana and they made it illegal, or bath salts or whatever it was. And it wouldn't have even been created in the first place if other drugs weren't legal. It's just ridiculous. They cause worse drugs to be created. the government. I'm saying they cause worse drugs to be created. They cause people to do drugs that they wouldn't do. And yes, it's your own choice. You know, you can't blame things on everybody else, but at the same time, it's, you know, it does have an effect, meaning that if you take something like Kratom and, of course, ban it, it will lead to people doing other drugs. It's just a fact. If you get rid of something or make it harder to get something, it will lead to people doing something to replace that. Now, the thing with Kratom, it's in small doses. It's actually in the same family as coffee, believe it or not. And Thailand's the number one, I think, country that it comes from, but it's also, I know, in Bali, Indonesia, mostly Southeast Asia is where it's grown. But I'm sure they could figure out a way to grow it in the U.S. with all of the technology that's been developed when it comes to growing things. Now, I don't know how much that would cost or whatnot, and I don't know in what type of atmosphere, you know, because like no one's growing opium here or growing coca leaves, but that might be because there's no need to. So it's just like something like crystal meth that started being made here. You know, people realized, hey, we can make a drug here. We don't have to bring it in from other countries. So people that want to get high or want to get, and I'm not even saying that Kratom gets you high, but it's there's going to be some kind of replacement, and we'll go into what people use it for in a second. But so it comes from countries, or it's grown mostly in countries in Southeast Asia, and they import it, of course, legally. Now, I did read in the DEA document that they issued something like they were holding up shipments of it, and they're using the fact that there's more and more being shipped into the United States as a reason to get rid of it or to Schedule 1 it, which makes no sense to me. I don't know, although it does make sense, but it doesn't make sense. It makes sense from the standpoint of, like I said, once something gets too big, well, it's cutting into something else. So, Kratom, which again most people call Kratom, but I'm going to call Kratom. But if you just tuned in, Kratom is used for at small doses. It's more of a stimulant, so they say, and at higher doses, it does bind with opiate receptors, but it's not an opioid. Now, the DEA, of course, calls it an opioid. It is not an opioid. There are two chemicals in it that they are banning. I can barely pronounce them, but you can look them up. It's like my something and hydrochlor my something. It's and it has a 7 in it. Let me see if I can pronounce those a little better. And I have their document here as opposed to having it on. I have the electronic one too, but I had actually printed it out. But the two active chemicals, I guess, in it are what they are putting under Schedule 1. And of course, those would be in the plant. And it's mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine. So they're saying on a temporary basis, which means forever. And it means 2 years, but they can just renew it after that, and that's what they'll do. So what people use it for are a bunch of different things. People would talk about using it to keep alert, for anxiety, to relax. And then the biggest thing and the most important, and this is what I think really got the attention of the government, is people are using it to get off of painkillers and heroin. So that's when they're like, wait a minute, you're going to take this. And it actually is also good for pain as well. So when you have a plant, first of all, they can't get patents on plants. They can't make money off plants because when it comes down to it, you could grow it yourself or, you know, have it sent to you from somebody. I mean, it totally changes the landscape. When you have something that has to be synthesized by a chemist, although there are drugs like crystal meth that people have learned to make, but that have to, you know, where you take a plant, like with coca leaves and poppy plants, when they're turned into heroin and cocaine, each one, they go through a whole process. It's not just like they take the leaves or they take the gooey stuff out of the poppy, although I believe you could do that and it would still have the same effect. But there's a couple other things in there, and they have to get out the codeine and morphine and whatnot. So it goes through a whole process. It's not as easy as people think it is. And as far as growing them, I don't know why no one's ever really tried to grow coca leaves and opium poppies in the U.S., because I'm sure you could do it somewhere. It may be just people are too scared to do that, and why do it when it's still getting into the United States anyway, so why bother? But things like, you know, Percocet and oxycodone and things like that, it will cut into that. Now, I don't think they make, and I've said this before, I think those should be totally legal. They're not, there's nothing in them that's really that dangerous, to be honest. However, they're currently controlled by the government. So they don't want you to be able to go and do something yourself or handle a problem or issue. They want to control everything you do. And this is the ultimate point of government or purpose of government, in what they want to do, their ultimate goal. And I've always said this, and I was talking to somebody today and I had said this, but I say it on the show all the time, that government, and look up government in the dictionary, that their ultimate goal is to control every aspect of your life. So you look at something that's good for people. No one's ever overdosed off it. No one's ever died off it, despite what you're going to hear. Because what they have done, they claim 15 deaths. So what they've done is, and they do this with painkillers too, even though people do overdose, but to make them worse, is they don't mention the other shit in people's systems. But there was a death that they went into details about, and the person, it was even ruled that the person died from the other drugs in their system, that the Kratom had nothing to do with it. And they claim there were 15 deaths, all of those deaths, other drugs in their system. And I'm sure it was the same thing. Kratom had nothing to do with it. The only deaths, I believe, that were sort of Kratom related was somebody they laced in another country, supposedly, and I've yet to been able to confirm this, laced it with something else. So that would be like giving somebody heroin and putting in the fentanyl so they'd overdose. So that doesn't even count. That's a total another drug. So the same thing. So Kratom is like, and I've taken like a lot of it at a time, to be honest. When I tried it before, I took a lot at a time, and it will make you sick to your stomach. Especially me, I have a, sensitive stomach, and I've been having stomach issues and stuff like that. I haven't taken it in a while, but that's about it. So in that sense, it's like marijuana. And you could see why they would want to ban it, because they want people in rehabs going through, and think of it, this is fucked up. So you're on heroin, they want you to go to rehab and get on a methadone or Suboxone routine instead of something like Kratom. And even if you do get addicted to Kratom, which it's possible, I would think, and some people have said, yeah, I got addicted, but the withdrawal is barely anything, saying what other people had said. And also, it's all natural anyway, and it's not gonna, you know what I mean? It would be probably as addictive as marijuana, and which is probably more mental. But at the same time, it can get you off of things like heroin. And I was reading an article by, I think it was a woman who, was taking painkillers indefinitely for her pain, and found Kratom and has been taking it ever since, and doesn't have any problems with it, and is in perfect health, and is, flipping out now, as I am as well, just because of the whole point of this. It is fucking ridiculous. What are you gonna ban, like grass, like literal grass, flowers? I mean, to ban a plant, first of all, to ban anything that people put in their body, I've went through this before. There's something called self-ownership, and you have the right to put whatever you want in your body. The government has no right to tell you what to put in your body. If they arrest you for that, they are kidnapping you. It's not a complicated concept to understand. Now, you could tell me that you don't own yourself and the government owns you. Go ahead. But you can't tell me that you own yourself, but you don't have a right to put this in your body. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a bunch of people that are taking Kratom and I'm talking about the people that are taking it specifically for withdrawal from methadone or Oxycontin or hydrocodone or any of those things. And to be honest, I have a different opinion of opioids than most people, at least most of them. I think the biggest problem with opioids is you can't get them, because the only danger of opioids is not the fucking opioid part. Like hydrocodone is not the hydrocodone that's going to do damage. It's the fucking ibuprofen or acetaminophen, that's in it, that could do damage. And that's what the doctors are worried about. So you can take that out of it and just have plain, and that's what they did with Oxycontin. And Oxycontin is probably better for you, to be honest, than hydrocodone, because or Norco, which is the same Vicodin. The difference between Vicodin and Norco is Vicodin had 500 milligrams of acetaminophen, and that's why they lowered it, because acetaminophen can do damage to your liver. So essentially, the opioid in itself, all it does damage-wise is it's hard to get, and it's illegal, so it damages the amount of fucking money you have because you have to go on the street and buy it. And some people turn to heroin, which is bad for you, although part of it, the reason why it's bad for you, again, is because you're buying it on the street. You don't know what the fuck you're getting. So you're taking a big risk there. Now, I don't think heroin is the best thing for you anyway because of the mixture of chemicals and things like that. If you want to use opium, if it was produced by companies that were legitimate companies, you'd go into a store and buy it. And I'm not talking, and I want the government totally out of it. No taxing. You know, in fact, the series of articles I've written is the war on drugs, bring things back to how they were before 1914. Because before 1914, the government had never regulated what you can put in your body. And you could walk into the store and buy heroin like it was anything else. But you had companies, reputable companies, that they don't want to kill. As much as we talk about things like, you know, over the course of your life, like Monsanto and, you know, eating organic food and stuff like that, they want to kill you slowly, first of all. They don't want to fucking kill you neither, right away at least. They don't care if you die of cancer 30, 40 years later after you bought their product for that long. So they'll take the money, you know, and you'll die then. But no company wants to kill their customers immediately, at least. They want customers over the years. Even cigarette companies. You don't smoke one cigarette and die. So most companies, although it's gotten, you know, pretty fucked up, but even, you know, there's exceptions to the rule like Monsanto and stuff like that. But I remember watching, and I talked about this movie last week, The Insider, and how they mentioned the guy who ran, I think it was Johnson & Johnson, Tylenol. If people don't remember, in the 80s, there was a big scare with Tylenol. What happened was some lunatic put stuff in the bottles and people ended up dying. So, like, basically tainted their bottles. And that's probably what happened with that batch of Kratom or something. But what they did is right away they reacted to it. They took everything off the shelf. They didn't think about the money. Well, maybe they did long term. Maybe they thought about the brand long term. But because he was comparing them to cigarette companies. And he said they took all the bottles off the shelves and they didn't bring them back until, you know, they came up with those seals and whatever, and not seals. That's probably a bad impression, but the seals on the bottles. So the tamper-proof bottles. So you know if it's been tampered with. And he was comparing that to a cigarette company that tested cigarettes and found out either that some chemical that was so bad for you that, you know, it would cause you cancer in a certain amount of time or something like that. I don't remember. But of course, there's people who smoke cigarettes their whole lives and live. But the difference was they didn't pull it from there, or the way they handled it. Because Johnson & Johnson, which I believe was a company, again, I could be wrong, but I think that's who owns Tylenol. But whatever, Tylenol does not want to kill its customers. Most companies do not want to kill their customers. They're in it for the long term, and one, they don't want to go to jail. They're under a set of rules. It's not like a drug dealer on the street who really doesn't give a fuck because drugs are illegal. So one, if he kills one of his customers, who gives a fuck? And there's a whole bunch of other ones lined up at the door. They kill people on purpose with heroin. they lace it because it actually increases the value, meaning that if somebody dies off heroin, they know it's very powerful and they want it. Or ODs off it. You don't always die when you OD. And they keep talking about, this is the other thing, they keep talking about heroin being an epidemic, right? A lot of people hear that now. And of course, painkillers being an epidemic. But they could take care of that so easily, make it fucking legal, and there you go. Because again, the main heroin, I don't know, but you could definitely stop a lot of the deaths from heroin. I don't know what you do if you legalized it and how you made it to make it safer, but still get people to buy it as opposed to buying heroin off the street. But there's probably a lot of the people would rather just take pills, to be honest. So if you made painkillers legal, they would probably just get those. And if they wanted to get off them, it'd be a lot easier. They'd be legal. The shame associated with it, everything's tracked now, so that could be held against you later. There's just all this shit. But anyway, and this is the whole thing of that comes into play as well as think of all the things that are legal now that they could make illegal tomorrow, and they're collecting all this data off you. And then they know that, oh, this person does this or this person does that. Now we're going to watch these people because we know they do this, and now it's illegal. So we got a whole fucking list of people to arrest. So that factors into the, spying on everybody thing too, because all you have to do is keyword, and algorithms, they can program them so sophisticated now that it's not just keyword. It's, I can't even fathom what they can do with algorithms. I wish it was something I could do. And programming, I do a little different type of programming. I do, retrieving data from databases. I can write SQL, and that's really nothing, I think, compared to when people talk about programming and, website and computer programming and stuff like that. But I learned it all on my own. So I'm sure I could learn and maybe be an average programmer or, maybe not even average, but, good enough to get by and maybe be one of the lesser, not like the geniuses and the stuff that they do. But the things that it could do, I can't even fathom that. But, I mean, that's just another note on this. But they're saying how much of an epidemic it is. And then you have something like Kratom, and they don't want people treating themselves, essentially. It's, oh, well, the government knows everything, so we have to do the test. We have to have our people do tests and see if this is something that actually would help. And then you'd have to go and be documented and then go to the rehab or the, outpatient rehab, whatever, and do like they do with Subutex. I heard people even talk about that. Talk about, they were taking Subutex, and Subutex, from what I understand, is the same. It's a drug to get you off of heroin or methadone or painkillers or whatever. So essentially, that's, if people are doing that on their own, look, people don't want to go to a fucking rehab and give all their information when they know already that the government has all of this shit. And, this is something that I thought of for a long, long time, or I thought for a long, long time that the government, was doing fucked up shit like this and whatever. But now we know for a fact, and you can't deny it. And all your medical records are also there. So who wants to go to an outpatient rehab and tell someone, hey, I had an issue with heroin, or I had an issue with painkillers, I had an issue with whatever? They don't want to do that shit. If they can find something that it's simple for them, they just go to the store, they go online and order something, and it helps them. What is wrong with that? Nothing. And it's their right. So again, you know, I think where everything starts when it comes to freedom is really at self-ownership. But I guarantee you there are going to be people that are gonna say that, yes, I own myself, but drugs should be legal. I mean, drugs should be illegal. You can't have it both ways. So there's a few issues here with this process. One, you have, first of all, again, I think all drugs should be legal. I pretty much, for people who haven't listened before, I pretty much don't think there should be a government. I think there should be an organized society, and I believe in freedom, true freedom, not the Republican fucking conservative bullshit, what they call freedom, which is fascism, freedom. And I believe from that concept of self-ownership that if you want to put something in your body, no matter what it's going to do to it, it's up to you. But we're talking about something that's not even dangerous anyway. And I think that's been proven. You know, it's like they have to do their own tests, but people have been doing tests themselves. Go on fucking YouTube, and you can go through probably thousands of videos of people that have done Kratom for years. Some people just do it medicinally, and that's fine too. You know, life is not easy. Life is stressful. And government adds to it, to be honest. And through that stress, you know, people do different things to get through it. Now, if it becomes a problem, that's one thing. But a lot of drugs only become a problem because they're illegal. I mean, alcohol is probably worse than any fucking drug that exists. Maybe crystal meth. I don't know. I've only, for those who don't know, I've only tried cannabis and, you know, Kratom. I didn't consider that a drug. And the last time I did cannabis was like 20 years ago or something like that. So it just wasn't my thing. But, and then prescription, you know, painkillers. But, nothing else. So, you know, personally, I would never touch something like crystal meth or cocaine or none of that stuff. But if somebody wants to do it, that's fine. But what the government does is they say, well, we're going to make marijuana, cannabis a Schedule 1 and Kratom a Schedule 1. And we're going to take the stuff that's probably the most safest for you, that will help you the most, that is not even as bad as alcohol. And we're going to make those not even illegal, but a Schedule 1. What Schedule 1 means is that not only does it have the harshest punishments, although now cannabis, they give you tickets, like I said earlier, in most states. But I believe heroin, you know, has the biggest penalty when it comes to drugs. But they say it has no medical use, which is bullshit. And they still haven't changed cannabis from Schedule 1. They've talked about it. And again, this goes back to the president, because these agencies are under the administrative branch. And, of course, the attorney general, who does he report to? Oh, that would be the president or she. So hopefully, I saw a company that wanted to take this to court and file an injunction. And it's weird, and they mentioned this on another show, that this is an emergency thing that they're doing, making it Schedule 1. Like, they're filing an emergency whatever you want to fucking call it, right? What about the emergency of the other way? And that's what they had brought up, that, you know, people need this. Shouldn't it be the other way around? Why don't you emergency unschedule fucking stuff? And I'm going to go through their rationale, which again is a bunch of bullshit, in their document. And you can find it online. It's at the Federal Register.gov, or it's scheduled to be, it's scheduled to be published in the Federal Register on 8/31. So it was yesterday. That's when I found it. So it's like a 21-page document from the Department of Justice. That's why I pretty much assume, you know, and it's a notice of intent, but assume that the Attorney General has already said that they're going to do this, which is, again, fucked up because, you know, you have the president there who's pretty much done a lot more than marijuana. And if he would have got caught for it, any of the drugs he's done, he wouldn't be the fucking president right now. But he wants to emergency schedule this drug. Now, to me, they shouldn't do shit until they have actual evidence, which they will never have. But either way, they're involved in it now. And it's been on a list for a while. It's been on a watch. It's almost like a terrorist watch list for drugs that the DEA has. Like, you're on a terrorist watch list for drugs. It's been there for a while. So this doesn't surprise me because I knew it was on there. But this president's supposed to be, you know, from what he says, letting people out of jail for cannabis and, you know, light on the drug war and all. It's all bullshit anyway, because, again, I don't believe that anybody in government actually are the real people that run the government. It's the people behind them, whether you want to call them, whether it's corporations, the elite and the billionaires, or the secret societies or whatever. I think it's a combination of all of them, to be honest, that run things. And you have like the Council on Foreign Relations, right? Do you know? A lot of people don't know this. The Council on Foreign Relations is not part of government. And you have people like Hillary Clinton did a speech months ago to the Council on Foreign Relations. You have them on political shows, members. You have former members of government that join them. What the fuck are they doing over there? They shouldn't exist. And then you have, you know, of course, the Bilderberg group that people talk about, and the Trilateral Commission, which both Bill Clinton and Jimmy Carter came from, and the Bushes and all that shit. The bushes and the trees. And so I think that the real people that run government are, you know, the behind the scenes people. That not everything, but I think the important things are, you know, the billionaires, the corporations, and those non-government entities that kind of dictate what's going to happen. Now, do I think like they had something to do with this? Not exactly, but I think that this is all in line with where America is going. So to me, this is a perfect example. You have something that's helping people, but it's not under government regulation. It's not under government watch, whether it's through doctors or through whoever that's in government. So even like what they're doing with cannabis, with medical, you know, cannabis, they started it with that. And now even in the states where it's legal, they gave it's more freedom than I would have thought, because I watched a documentary on one of the marijuana shops and they seem to be a pretty free business, except for the taxes and all the money and all the permits. And well, see, there you go right there. All the money, all the permits, that pisses me off right there in general. So I feel like the way Kratom is now, right, it's just on the shelf, you go and buy it. That's how everything else should be as well. But I don't think Kratom will ever go back to that. I think unless they get some kind of injunction and this doesn't happen, once they get involved, it's not going to go back to that. And you have the DEA, again, this benefits them because the first thing they're going to do is they're going to raid all these businesses. Like I said, they did it with bath salts, synthetic marijuana, and all of that shit. And then they get to keep, you have asset forfeiture where they take all this money. Then who knows? They may go to who's bought this shit. It may go black market and the price may go way up, or again, people may go to heroin or try to go to painkillers back if they were taking them before. And then you just have a bunch of people that, take it medicinally, and they don't have to take it, but they might try to find something else. And it's fucked up. Don't fuck with shit that ain't broken because of your own agenda. And the bottom line is it's about control. It's all about control. There's other reasons, but it has nothing to do with caring about the safety of the people or any of that. I'll go into Kratom just real quick, and then I'll play some clips. And then when I come back, I'll go over what the DEA is saying. But there's different types. There's red vein, white vein, and green vein. And that really is in the leaf. You can actually see like a red, if you look at a leaf and you see the vein of the leaf. And then there's the different types like Mangda, there's Indo whatever. I think that's because it's from Indonesia. There's Bali something. They have all these different names for them. If you go to one of the websites, you can find them. And it's kind of like marijuana in that different ones they say are better for different things. So red vein's supposed to be more not more relaxing, but more of the euphoric thing. And I think white vein is more of the stimulant, and green vein is a kind of a mixture of both of them. And when I had them before, I bought different kinds, and I even mixed them together just to see how that was. So it's very similar to cannabis, but I don't want to see it even go into the same classification of cannabis, even if cannabis is legal. So now they develop Kratom stores and they tax the fuck out of it, and you have to get all these licenses. I mean, the show I watched, they had to save up over $100,000 just to open a store. I mean, that was for like the licensing and all of that shit. The government is way too involved, and they have no business to be involved. Again, free market, as I've said before, is democracy in its purest form. Now, it's hard to get to that because you have all the crony capitalism and corporations and all this bullshit. But if you had a bunch of small businesses, people can put somebody out of business by not shopping there. So meaning that you choose to shop where you want, and you basically vote with your dollars. And the same thing with, should be with all businesses, and government should get the fuck out of it. And you have the cannabis distributors that are just, they make a lot of money after they put up a huge investment. So they also, what the government does by making all of these regulations not the drug ones, but just in general. So say even what they did with cannabis is they make it hard for people to start their own businesses. Only the billionaires and people with a lot of money can start their own businesses. If I want to start my own little Kratom business right now, I should be able to. Of course, I'm not going to be able to because they're going to put it on Schedule 1 and it will be totally illegal. I hope that the online sellers fight back somehow. I would say, fuck it, just keep selling it. And then when they come to arrest you, defend yourself. I'll put it that way. But, at this point, what else do you do? The system does not work. The government controls whatever. Your vote for president doesn't mean shit. There's over 300 million people in the country. You think your one vote is gonna make a fucking difference? No, it's not. And they rig it where, the parties pick the candidates. The whole fucking thing is rigged. You have the media who does what the government wants, and as I call them, government media. It's a whole fucking thing. And the thing about this that is so, I'm trying to think of a good word here. Not interesting, but this is just such a good example of how the government works. So let me just summarize it, and then I'm going to play these clips. And then after that, we'll go to the document and go to all the lies and bullshit that they put in there. And the numbers nobody puts numbers in perspective. Again, there's 300 to 320 million people in this country. Think of that when you think of things. If someone says, well, 10,000 people a year die from this. Well, 2.5 million people a year die. So if you put things in perspective, not that it's good anybody dying, but, people don't put things in perspective compared to things like the population and things like that, where they mention, I'll say one thing they mention in the stupid document is phone calls to the poison center. They went up like 300 to, I think their number, which was inflated from the article I read, like 600. The poison center gets 630 calls or something about Kratom. And you want to put that in a fucking document? You know how much 630 people are as a percentage of the population? Try like 100 zeros and then a 1. I mean, that's nothing. So it's so ridiculous. I mean, more people call the poison center for, their kid drinking perfume. You want to ban perfume? I mean, it's just ridiculous, their logic. They use anything. They exploit whatever they can. And people are so ignorant that they just fall for this bullshit. So we'll get into that when we come back and get into the document. I'll go through most of the document. And it's just sickening and frustrating and all of this stuff. But I know I was going to say something real quick and I totally forgot what I was going to say. Oh, okay. So to summarize how this is a great example of government. So the DEA as an organization on their own decide, hey, we think this is dangerous. Really, they're like, we need more shit to do. Cannabis is, pretty much close to becoming totally legal. We're going to be shut out of that. Who knows if other drugs are going to, follow? Probably not. But I'm just worried about the regulation. Just get the fucking government out of it. It's so frustrating to me. like I said, get everything like Kratom. It works fine. You walk into the store, you buy it online. Anyway, yeah, so this is the DEA now. I'm being the DEA. Well, I'd have to have like an asshole voice and whatever, but let's schedule one this thing. Okay, yeah, because we need more. We can do asset forfeiture. These businesses are making a lot of money now. We noticed they're shipping all this stuff in, and that's in the document. A lot of people are buying this stuff. Maybe we can seize all this money. And that's what they did there was a place in New Hampshire that was raided for synthetic marijuana that hadn't sold it for 6 months because it became illegal. They stole their money. They took a bunch of their shit. So, hey, we can, generate some revenue here. Yeah. So then they go talk to the attorney general. Okay, whatever you guys want to do. Submit an announcement. Here's your 30-day notice. 30 days. Because this is an emergency. Not a year, not 6 months. Even laws, they give you like 6 months to a year to prepare for something. I mean, think of that for a minute. You have people that have jobs that are running these companies, and you give them fucking 30 days? It should be fucking a couple years. But no, this is an emergency because you had 630 fucking people call the poison center. So, which were probably people who took way too much and were just sick and they were paranoid. Like, oh my God, am I going to die? My stomach hurts. Like fucking idiots. So, and that was, I think, between 2 years. I'm not sure on that, but I'll verify that when we come back. So 30 days and they're out. And that's it. Hey, isn't it great how government works? So basically, what control or say do you, all the people out there, and especially Kratom users, have in that decision? Or what power do you have to do any fucking thing? You could sign that petition, which I still would. I did, and I don't sign petitions, but I don't think it's going to do shit. You could call your representative or, your senator. They can't do shit. You could try to call the president. I'm sure he's going to talk to you. Or the attorney general's office. I'm sure they're going to talk to you. Or the head of the DEA. These are all national agencies. It's not like calling, your senator that represents, or your local senator or your local rep that maybe represents, 40,000 people, which is still a lot. So, yeah. But that's how it works. It's bad enough what they're doing here. And they're saying, oh, fuck all those people who rely on this to get up in the morning because they're in pain or they're still getting through a heroin addiction. Oh, who cares about them? Fuck them. Let them lose their job. They got 30 days, They don't give a fuck about anybody. But that's how government works in all aspects. I know they pass laws and whatever. They have so many laws, they don't even know how many laws they have. But they don't give a fuck. That's the whole thing. They do whatever they want to do. Because their ultimate goal is to turn things into 1984. And if you don't know what I mean by 1984, there's a movie, 1984, and a book by George Orwell where basically they live in a society where everything in their life is controlled by the government. They worship the government. The government is God, all of that, shit. We are pretty much there, to be honest. I do this show. I do a lot of research. I wish I had time to do more. Unfortunately, I have a full-time job that I have to balance with this. I wish I could just do this. So if you'd like to donate, nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. But I do this because I care about people being free and living free lives and making their own decisions. And you know what? You may make a decision to not do any drugs. And hey, that's great for you. Or you may make a decision to live your life a certain way. Now, as long as you don't try to restrict what I do, that's fine. You may make a decision that you don't want your kids to watch R-rated movies, and you want to put one of those things on your cable box. And you have the freedom to do that. That's fine. But when you want to pass a law that requires everybody to do it, that's when it gets fucked up. So I have a bunch of clips to play. I may stop and say something about them, but I doubt it. I think there's one clip that I actually might comment on about a woman who blames Kratom for her fucking son's suicide, which is, it's just ridiculous. And of course, I feel bad that her son committed suicide, but it had nothing to do with it. So I'm going to play a quick commercial. We only play commercials for other shows on the network, and we actually only have one commercial for our other show on the network. But coming soon as well is the Threat Management Center show. I was actually talking to Dale Brown, the host, and you can look up the Detroit Threat Management Center. I think it's DetroitThreatManagementCenter.com. We have information on our website as well. So Dale's show is coming soon. I was talking to him earlier, and we unfortunately didn't even get to talking about the show because there's just so much. Dale has so much to talk about that he's got to have a show. Probably longer than we were planning on. We were planning on an hour, but we might want to do a couple hours. I mean, and this is a guy who's been through everything. He has probably 25 years of stories to tell that are just, and he's great at telling them. So, but I'm going to play our commercial for our show that airs on Monday, the Illumination Hour, and then a bunch of clips related to Kratom. So we'll be right back after this. Check us out, nonpartisanlibertyforall.com. And, of course, if you want to call in, 702-470-7664. And Skype, username Nonpartisan Liberty for All. If you didn't catch that, go to nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, and that information's there as well. So we will be right back. nonpartisanlibertyforall.com.
Are you looking for a podcast that talks about life, the universe, and everything? Listen in to the Illumination Hour, Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Listen live at Spreaker.com or NonpartisanLibertyForAll.com. We're also on SoundCloud, Spreaker, Twitter, Tumblr, YouTube, and iTunes. The Illumination Hour, brought to you by Nonpartisan Liberty for All Media and Radio Network. And your host, Ellen Stallone. Because a spark can illuminate the world.
And legal or addictive and dangerous. That's the Kratom controversy. As Palm Beach County looks to regulate Kratom, the Contact 5 investigators do something no other media outlet in the country has done.
One thing I did want to mention that I didn't mention earlier is it's illegal in about 5 states. And I believe Florida is one, because when I went there, I think I was going to bring it, or I remember saying something about, I'm glad I didn't bring it. And I know Tennessee, Alabama, it's about 4 or 5 states. So, and really, the federal government making drugs legal is violating the Constitution too. Not like it matters, because they don't give a fuck what the laws are. But I just wanted to mention that.
We tested it. Katie Legrone with the results.
You can buy it in powder, capsules, even liquid. It's part of the Kratom craze. Completely legal, naturally leafy, and deeply rooted
It's not highly addictive unless say it is. I say it's not.
in controversy.
This was like the devil drug. That's how he put it.
Linda Montner blames Kratom for her son's death this summer.
He needed that drug.
Ian was 20 years old. The
Okay, I can't not say something about this. So she had a son who was on a bunch of different shit for like depression and this and that. And then he took Kratom. She said, oh, he needed it and whatever. And she found like a bag by his bed and he committed suicide. And again, you're taking a bunch. And then she says, well, before he started taking Kratom, he wasn't, suicidal. I would think if anything it made it would make him actually happier and help him, but obviously he was depressed and had issues. So if he's on medication for fucking depression and he was probably suicidal already, how are you going to blame so now he starts taking Kratom and then you're going to blame that? Because you want to blame something, first of all. Of course, parents a lot, I think, blame themselves, which, I don't think they should do. But in some cases, maybe they could have saved their kid. I don't know. But that's not the point. She became a crusader. This is what happens. People become crusaders. And this is why, with DUIs, why they're so serious now and we have checkpoints and shit like that, because a bunch of mothers wanted to become crusaders on something, and because their kids couldn't fucking handle it. And that's not even the case here. I mean, this had nothing to do with Kratom, but even in cases where, say, it did have something to do with a drug, because your kid can't handle it, you want to go and save the fucking world and interfere with other people's lives. And that's what this lady wanted to do. And I'm sure she called everybody she could possibly fucking call. So I'll play the rest of the story.
July day, he jumped off an overpass into traffic on I-95.
I rushed home, and I was coming home from West Palm, and I was stuck in traffic, the traffic where my son was laying in the road. And after that, I don't remember because I went into shock.
Ian Montner's autopsy report showed an unknown amount of what's called mitragynine, the active ingredient in Kratom. Also listed a number of antidepressants.
Those drugs were working for him when he was clean. It wasn't until he picked up the Kratom.
Linda believes it was Ian's addiction to Kratom that ultimately sent him over the edge.
Why aren't we testing these things before they're tried on our kids like guinea pigs?
The Contact 5 investigators decided
they're tried on our kids like guinea pigs. So he didn't go and buy it himself and use it and do that without doing any research or learning anything about it. I never took Kratom before I went and did research on it. And then I took it. Before that, I did not. So that's on the person. Where is fucking self-responsibility? And I know this is a mother who lost a son. I know, I can't imagine what that's like. So it's hard to not come off like an ass when I'm saying this. But at the same time, there is self-responsibility. And again, this had nothing to do with the whole point is, she's going to blame it on that. It had nothing to do with it anyway. But for anything, you have to take your own responsibility. Unless somebody puts a fucking gun to your head, which you usually only see in movies, and makes you do a drug, it's your responsibility to find out that information. And, if something is poisoned or something like that, then that's the fault of, obviously, that company. It's just like when it comes to guns, people want to sue the maker of a gun because some crazy motherfucker goes out and shoots somebody. Now, how does that have to do with the person who made it? It has nothing to do with it. Now, if the gun backfired and operated incorrectly and shot the person that was shooting it, then that's a different story. So, there's no more self-responsibility. And this is why things are turning into what they are, because people want government, a certain amount of people, to solve all their problems and be their parents and check everything out for them and make sure everything's okay for them. And that's fine. You want to do that? Go do that. Live under a different, system. Because I'd rather go to the desert and build my own free fucking community. Problem is I'd have probably a SWAT team there, pretty quickly. One, telling me that it's their land, and two, that, I have to live under their laws, even though I never consented or I never agreed. I was just born. And, people say, well, if you don't like it here, go someplace else. Well, where am I going to go? The problem is not here. It's the government. And there's a problem. Governments have spread to the whole world, and they're just as oppressive every place else as they are here.
To do just that. Here we go. Undercover and armed with cash, we went shopping, hitting a quick stop, a cigar bar, and 2 kava bars. Our kratom loot included powder, capsules, and this liquid drink sold to us as half kava, half kratom.
With so much debate about kratom in our area, it's time to find out what's in this stuff.
We packed up our purchases and shipped our samples to NMS Labs in Pennsylvania, an accredited forensic lab specializing in identifying new drugs like kratom.
There's plenty of evidence that it's addictive.
NMS National Director of Forensic Services, Dr. Barry Logan.
Dr. Logan, what did you find?
Products that are on sale down here in South Florida may be kratom, or it may be something else. It may be nothing.
3 out of our 4 samples tested positive for metrigenine, kratom's active compound, and 1 came back no findings.
The 4th product had indications that were small amounts there, but not enough for us to be able to confirm its presence.
Which means what to a consumer who's looking for some kind of effect from it?
So it definitely makes it more dangerous for the consumer because from product to product there are different amounts of the active drug in it.
And so why is that significant?
You could be getting nothing, or you could be getting something very potent that could put you in the hospital.
Kratom is unregulated in the U.S., leaving potency levels all over the map, from batch to batch, packet to packet, or drink to drink.
I think it just underlines the fact that the consumer really never knows what it is they're buying.
So bottom line, Dr. Logan, is this stuff dangerous?
Yeah, it is. Who knows if the vendors or the manufacturers are even testing their own products to see how much of the drug is in there.
Steppin' Food off North Lake.
Can I use this stuff, please?
And Carolina Cigars in Delray Beach.
Okay, but I don't want to be on TV.
Didn't care to talk about our results and their supply.
There's nothing illegal about it.
I just can't talk about it right now,
At Kava Sutra in Lake Worth.
We're with Channel 5.
Where a month ago we purchased this Ziploc bag labeled KBS 15-year-old leaf kapow.
We just wanted to talk about the kratom you guys are selling.
Not only were we welcomed inside, but while our camera rolled, so did theirs.
We purchased kratom here and had it tested. And they didn't even find any kratom in it.
Really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting response to our kratom.
Kava Sutra ultimately questioned our tests and our findings.
It's taking advantage of our young people.
Linda Montner now wants limits on kratom after she says the natural drug,
He's not coming back, but I'm going to go to him.
Did the most unnatural thing to her.
One day. I got work to do.
Purple Lotus in West Palm Beach, where we bought the drink, also declined to speak with us. The owner said he felt the media's coverage of kratom hasn't been fair by featuring Linda Montner. We're taking our results to county commissioners who begin debating regulation next week. Their reaction tomorrow at 6. Katie Legrone, WPTV News Channel 5.
Hi, this video is for anybody going through opiate withdrawals, whether it be methadone, Suboxone, oxycodone, Opana, Dilaudid, anything. I have the cure to all withdrawals, and I am living proof that it works. What I have here is something called Kratom. This is from Kratom. It's about $40, $35 for 56 grams. It will cure every single one of your withdrawal symptoms if taken in the right dose. I personally take 2 very large teaspoons in about 1/4 of a cup of grapefruit juice because grapefruit juice potentiates the kratom. And you chug it. I plug my nose, swallow it down, and follow it up by coffee because it tastes like ass. But it works. You take it 2 to 3 times a day, 4 if necessary. But you want to limit your time taking it because it can be slightly addictive. Do not use it for more than 2 to 4 weeks and you should be fine. The withdrawal symptoms are very mild and are very tolerable, perhaps with some Xanax to ease the discomfort of anxiety, but it's nothing compared to opiate withdrawal. This company, this plant has changed my life. I was on 105 milligrams of methadone, detoxed administratorily 2 milligrams a day until I got down to about 60 or 70 and discovered the kratom. This kratom is a miracle drug. It's not a drug, actually. It's a plant. It's based out of Southeast Asia, Malaysia, that area, and it will save your life. If you want to detox off of any opiates, kratom is the answer. You will receive no withdrawals. If any, increase your dose. The lower the dose of kratom, the more stimulating. The higher the dose, the more sedating. But be careful because you cannot overdose, but if you take too much, you will vomit or get very nauseous. It is not a plant that can be overdosed on. You have to start out small. I would suggest between 6 and 9 grams and go from there. If that's not enough, increase it slowly by 2.5 grams. A lot of people suggest starting at 5 grams. I opted to go higher because my tolerance is very, very high. I've been an opiate abuser for over 30 years. This is the first thing I've ever come across that has taken away all my withdrawals without any side effects whatsoever. You sleep like a baby. Anything benzo related will potentiate it, but be careful because you don't want to get too messed up. I have never believed that I could detox off of anything. I was suicidal to the brink of I had my suicide planned. I had enough Xanax, methadone, and propanol to kill myself 10 times over. But something told...
And the government wants to ban this. Good for them. Bunch of motherfucking heartless motherfuckers. Sorry, I don't have a lot of other things in my mind right now of words to say.
Told me to look on the internet and research, and I researched every single site I could find on kratom. I see no negative effects. There is still a lot to be learned about it, but I do know it works. I am successfully detoxing off of methadone. I just spent the last 4 days with no methadone, and I feel perfectly fine. Even though I had to wait a day to get some extra kratom, I felt fine. Please, I cannot stress this enough. Give this plant a chance. It is a lifesaver. It is a miracle plant. I want nothing more than to see people break free from addiction, as it destroyed my life. I've been able to rebuild it, but it's taken a very, very long time. And any addict knows you lose everything in the process. Methadone is not the answer. Suboxone is not the answer. They are just substitute drugs. And you will go through withdrawals coming off it, no matter how slow. with Kratom, you will not have that problem. I'm being very serious about this, and I'm not joking or laughing or trying to make this a funny video, because it's a very serious situation. I lied in bed for 2-3 weeks, depressed, suicidal.
Hey guys, let's talk a little bit about Kratom and the effects of Kratom. The first thing that you should know is I'm a huge proponent of Kratom. I think it's a wonderful, helpful herb, so I'm a little biased. I also take it myself. Alright, so with that said, Kratom can do a number of different things. It can help with pain, anxiety, depression. It can help you recover faster from workouts. It can make you feel stimulated. It can give you a happy, euphoric feeling. Something else that Kratom can do is it can help an individual get over an opioid addiction. And opiates are things like oxys, Vicodin, and heroin. So how can one little herb do all of these things? Well, the two active ingredients in Kratom, metragenine and 7-hydroxymetragenine, work on your RU opioid receptor in your brain. And this is how it's able to reduce pain, both physical and emotional, and allow you to still have a stimulated, active, engaged brain. It's also how people are able to use Kratom to come off of opioid addictions, because it's working on the opioid receptor, so it reduces the amount of side effects an individual has. Now, I don't know too much about that personally, but there are a lot of anecdotes online if you're interested in other people's personal stories about how they've used Kratom to come off of opium. Now I want to tell you what Kratom is not. Kratom's not a very good party drug. It isn't like cocaine, MDMA, ecstasy. It's a lot more subtle than that. Now people can take it recreationally, but I put it in the same vein as having like a bottle of wine on a Friday night, or relaxing with a nice cigar. It's very subtle. So if you know someone who suffers from an opioid addiction, or would like to try a natural painkiller, or somebody who suffers from depression and doesn't want to take pharmaceutical drugs, or somebody who suffers from anxiety and maybe doesn't have insurance, Kratom could be really helpful for them. And let me know if you try it out and what you think. If you don't know where to purchase Kratom, I'll leave a link below for a company that I like.
Hey guys, what's going on? Steve Cronin. Today I want to talk about the DEA and their magic that they're working over there at the DEA to make things illegal, particularly nootropics and other drugs like Kratom, for example. This is a plant that is involved with nootropic use, with uses to alleviate pain for some people, as well as like anxiety, for example. This is something that I've used it for. And so a story out of Forbes today is saying that the DEA plans to make Kratom Schedule 1. Check out the story coming up. Alright guys, so this channel is all about how to become a really high performer in your professional lives. So this can include things like stress reduction techniques or nootropics, which are cognitive enhancing supplements, things like this. And so the way Kratom fits in here, or Kratom fits in here, Kratom is a plant. Some strains are used for cognitive enhancement, others are used for pain relief. I personally use it for anxiety relief. The DEA wants to put Kratom on the list of Schedule 1 drugs. This is up there with heroin, LSD, and currently even marijuana. Now when the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, when they put a substance on Schedule 1, they're saying that there is no medical benefit, and anyone involved with this substance, like, you know, possession of large amounts, selling it, using it, etc., they want to put those people in federal prison. The story out of Forbes is the DEA is placing Kratom on Schedule 1. The US DEA has filed a notice of intent to place this plant Kratom in the most restrictive classification of the Controlled Substances Act. Now, Kratom is a plant that currently is available over the counter. You can buy it at various head shops or vendors online, just like you can with nootropics, the vendors online. And here are some right here. Eternally Herbal, got some. This just happens to be red vein Thai Kratom, right? Different strains for different things. Kratom 1 is another company I really like. But yeah, the target date is September 30th. to where it will be illegal for you to actually purchase, possess, and use this stuff. Pretty scary. And it's probably not gonna stop here, right? Government entities, they like their control, they like their power. That's how they make their money, right? And we saw in the UK, you know, the UK Psychoactive Substances Act, right? The DEA putting Kratom on the list of Schedule 1. If you recall, I did this video with Jonathan Roseland of Limitless Mindset. I'll have that pop up in the right-hand corner right now. We had a little chat, posted it on YouTube, and in that video I actually predicted, I was like, you know what, I think the future of nootropics, at least in the short term and over the next 5+ years, you're gonna see governments around the world restricting access to these various nootropics via, you know, monopoly on the use of force or, you know, using laws in a sense. And so in the short term future, it's going to be really risky, like in terms of, you know, buying something or buying a lot of something, using it to help yourself, but then a few years later, maybe it's not legal to use anymore. And as nootropics and other cognitive enhancing drugs become more popular, governments will crack down. Ooh, my dog's playing with a toy. Governments will crack down, oh, Lucy, and start to, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so why would you want to restrict kratom use for people? It's a good question, right? So there's two issues I see. Number one, okay, I have something called AS, ankylosing spondylitis. It's a genetic mutation of HLA-B27, and it caused me a lot of back pain. Not all the time, it's not persistent, but every once in a while I will have these episodes where I have my back hurting. So my physician actually wanted to put me on Vicodin indefinitely. You know, as needed, right? So I'd have access to Vicodin indefinitely, and I'd take it on an as-needed basis for my back pain because there's really nothing. It's kind of like spinal arthritis. Like there's really nothing you can do for AS. So I was like, no, right? Like I did get, you know, fill my first bottle of Vicodin. I was taking it, and yeah, like it was fine, it worked. But I started to experience some of this addictive potential with the Vicodin. Kratom is an all-natural plant that you can use to relieve some of that pain, at least in my experience. Like, I don't know if it would work for everyone's pain, but it definitely worked for mine. It's a lot cheaper, it's a lot less addictive, but there is still some addictive potential to Kratom, but there's also addictive potential to coffee and phenibut, for example, a lot of these GABA precursors. I'm not trying to diminish this stuff. I personally have never experienced any addictive potential with Kratom for my body, and I've taken a significant amount of this stuff. Never experienced any addiction, no withdrawals, zero, nothing. And that is something I have experienced with something like Vicodin. And
this is Jake from AboutKratom.com, and in this video I'm going to cover what happens after you consume Kratom. What are the effects of Kratom? I've consumed Kratom over 1,000 times. So I know what I'm talking about here. So with that being said, there are 7 main effects, and let's start with the first one. The first effect is reduced anxiety. Kratom is not going to completely eliminate anxiety if you're really anxious, but if you just have some butterflies in your stomach, Kratom works fantastic. So like for instance, I would be nervous before going out on a date. So I would take Kratom beforehand, and I'd be able to work, I'd be able to do anything without feeling nervous, and then when I actually went on the date, I also was free of anxiety. So this is a really good effect. The second effect of Kratom is happiness or contentment. You're not going to feel super euphoric so that people think that you took a drug, but you will feel like you're having a good day. It'll definitely raise your happiness, especially if you're in a negative place for whatever reason. So it's also great for enjoying the present moment and forgetting about stress. I know that personally, sometimes I feel restless because I'm thinking about the future, thinking about what I should be doing, and Kratom just helps me feel happy in the present moment and appreciate what I'm doing right then. So this is a great effect of Kratom that can really have a benefit on your life. The third effect of Kratom is more compassion for others. So this is good if you are interacting with others. People always like people that are empathetic, that listen to them well, and Kratom will help you do this. I know that most of the time I'm not really interested in what people are saying, but when I'm on Kratom, I really do listen, and people appreciate that. And so I found that it's much easier to get along well with people and make friends when I'm on Kratom. Oh, and one other thing too is when I was working with clients, it was much easier to empathize with them when I was on Kratom, so that clients appreciated me more because they saw that I really did care about providing the best work possible for them.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All, and we are back. NonpartisanLibertyForAll.com. And before I go through this document, and I'm probably only going to do this once because this is the first week of the college football season, so they have a bunch of Thursday games. And UNLV is playing great. Of course, they're playing Jackson State, which is a shitty fucking team that's in the FCS, which I hate when Division I teams play FCS teams. However, UNLV isn't the greatest Division I team, so I don't really mind when they do it. But let me just go through the scores real quick for the Thursday night games. I know a lot of people that listen to the show, or I guess libertarians in general, although I do not define myself as anything. I just explain what I believe in, are anti-football. But football to me, at least college football, and I do like the pros, but not as much anymore because they've gotten too political. And I'm not talking about the Colin Kaepernick thing. I actually did a show about it where I supported him, and I'm wearing his UNR jersey right now. But that they supported like Obamacare and shit like that. But anyway, let me go through the scores real quick. A lot of these games are against FCS teams, which again, I don't like. But Western Kentucky is about to beat Rice 46-14. Oregon State's up 23-17 over Minnesota. Those are two, at least FBS teams out of major conferences at the end of the third quarter. New Mexico is up 48-21 with 8:50 left in the fourth. Idaho is up 20-17 over Montana State, which is a FCS team, but Idaho was pretty bad. They're actually going down a division next year. 10:45 left in the fourth in that game. And with 1:41 left in the second, Jackson State just kicked a field goal, I guess, because last time I looked, it was 42-14. But UNLV is up 42-10 at halftime, scoring 28 points in the first quarter. Their new quarterback who started this game, Johnny Stanton, 7 for 8 so far with 180 yards and 3 touchdown passes. Lexington Thomas, 8 carries for 67 yards and 2 touchdowns. And Devontae Boyd, the star wide receiver from last year, 4 receptions for 135 yards and 3 touchdowns. And the rest of these games are finals. South Carolina beat Vanderbilt. I guess they had to come back to do that, 13-10. Tennessee, ranked number 9, almost loses to an FCS team, Appalachian State. They beat them in overtime, 20-13. Louisville destroys Charlotte, which is an FCS team, 70-14. Central Michigan plays another FCS team, Presbyterian, destroys them 49-3. Wake Forest beats Tulane 7-3. Cincinnati over an FCS team, Tennessee Martin. Actually, they might have moved up, 28-7, and Connecticut over another FCS team, 24-21 over Maine. NC State, again, an FCS team, 48-14 destroys William and Mary. 2 teams in Division I, Indiana, Florida International, Indiana winning 34-13, and Utah playing Southern Utah, which another FCS team, 24-0. And Utah State, again, Division II FCS team, not actually Division II, one. I think they call them 1AA, beats Weber State 45-6. So those are the scores for tonight, and a few games still going on. So hopefully after the show, I'll be able to catch at least the fourth quarter of the UNLV game if it's on. I don't even know that it's on. I usually get season tickets, and this game is at home. So if I had got season tickets this year, I would have been at the game, actually. And I'm a little sad that I didn't, but and watch them be really good this year. But I needed to save the money. It was $600 for the seats that I have had the last 2 years for 2 tickets. If you get seats in a certain area, it's like the 50-yard line, are really good seats, and you have to give like some donation to whatever, but those are probably cheap compared to other schools because UNLV does not sell out their games. Anyway, I'm going to go through some of the points of this document, which is for the Federal Register. You can find it federalregister.gov. It's the Department of Justice memo or document that goes through Kratom. So it gives a summary. It says it's it's just ridiculous. It's necessary to avoid an imminent hazard to public safety. And we just talked about all of the ways that people have been helped. It's a temporary, but temporary for them is 2 years. And of course, it will stay that way. And if it ever comes back, it will come back as regulated. And we know that. And this is a notice of intent from the DEA and the Department of Just Ass is what we should start calling them, or Just Ass, basically, is what they are, because there's no fucking justice in this system. Not that, there are some people that are against the system because they want a socialist or communist type system, and I'm totally against that. And that was the Black Lives Matter platform. But I'm not for an oppressive system. There's not enough freedom. There's not enough freedom even in the Constitution. But so they go through the standard shit that they have the right to do this. The only authority that they have to do this is the fact that they have a bunch of fucking guns and they can show up and shoot and kill people. That's how government gets its authority, the barrel of a gun. We know that. And they go through these 8 factors as to why. So I don't know where the first fucking factors are. It starts at like factor 4. So they start to give a background and the ingredients that constitute it. So they go to, we'll start with history and current patterns of abuse. Now, this is, again, they name the active ingredients, and I just heard somebody say it and I still can't pronounce it, mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynate. And it talks about the history in Southeast Asia and the different names of it, and that it's easily obtained in smoke shops and over the internet, and how it says in the United States, law enforcement has seized the products in the following form. And it, gives all the forms. But why would they be seizing them? That doesn't make any sense to me. And it also said that they're holding up shipments. Now, there's a bunch of shipments, I guess, that they said that the police are holding up or something like that. And it's legal, so I don't know what the fuck they're doing. Again, they can do whatever the fuck they want. So they say evidence suggests that Kratom, which contains the main active alkaloids, yes, we know those, is abused individually and with other psychoactive substances. Okay, so this is where it gets ridiculous. In a 2016 publication, the Centers for Disease Control characterized Kratom exposures reported to poison centers and uploaded to the National Poison Center data systems. And statistics, I don't trust statistics, especially when they come from the government to support them doing something. But even these don't mean shit. Received 660 calls related to Kratom exposure. Of the calls reported, 487, 73.8, reported intentional exposure to Kratom. Yeah, wouldn't that be usually the purpose? And 595, 90% reported ingestion of the drug. Yeah. In addition to reports of isolated exposures to Kratom, 428, 64.8% reports Kratom being used with other substances were also recorded. So they're worried about 660 calls through 5 years. And it goes on to say it does not have an approved medical use in the United States and has not been studied as a treatment agent in the United States. Well, so what? Whose problem is that? They mentioned the FDA and that they have not marked it as safe for any use. Blah, blah, motherfucking blah. It says the abuse of Kratom, and it keeps repeating containing these alkaloids, is increasing in the United States and remains extremely concerning for law enforcement and public health. Really? So law enforcement, how would they, it's concerning for law enforcement. In what sense, in what way, and how would it be concerning for law enforcement? Now, the DEA doesn't know shit. They're a bunch of fucking morons. Federal officers. They're a little higher than, cops. And then, of course, law enforcement meaning what? Local law enforcement? Again, what the fuck do they know? And what? They've pulled people over and they had it and then they gave it back. I mean, what would make them, basically, this is a document that kind of says they're aware, they're nervous about all this shit, but they don't really know why. And it says it has been noted that physicians should be aware of Kratom's adverse health effects, toxicity, dependence, and withdrawal, which is basically none. Yes, it can be addictive. I would think it would take a long time, but again, I would put it at the level of marijuana, and people that have used it have said the same thing, that it's not addictive, and the people that have said it is addictive, as far as withdrawal symptoms, were basically nothing, meaning they weren't intense or anything like that, and it was probably more mental. I mean, everything's mental when it comes to stuff like that, especially if you're taking it for something like anxiety or other things. And then it just gives reports of how much were encountered by law enforcement at ports of entry, waiting FDA admissibility decisions. And then it says the amount of Kratom currently seized or waiting a decision is 12 million doses. I don't know. So here's one of the reasons. So because there's so much of it now coming into the country and being used, it's going to cut into things they don't want to cut into. The government's not going to make any money off of it except the shit they tax, I'm sure, import tax, and then, of course, sales tax. But websites don't have to pay sales tax unless they have a physical presence in that state. So, and of course, there is no federal sales tax anyway. And it says, according to press announcements, now they're going by press announcements, released in 2014 and 2016, the FDA requested the seizure by U.S. Marshals of 2,500 pounds of raw Kratom material, nearly 90,000 bottles of dietary supplements labeled as containing Kratom, and over 100 cases of products labeled as Kratom, respectively. And they warned the public not to use any products with Kratom, even though they don't know shit about it. Drug reports pertaining to the trafficking, distribution, and abuse were analyzed by federal, state, and local forensic laboratories. How could you analyze shit? It's just a bunch of, it says the forensic laboratory information systems registered 720 reports containing mitragynine. And they were reported across 43 states. It's just a bunch of bullshit. Additionally, the Texas Poison Center, which is comprised of 6 poison centers that service the state of Texas, reported 14 exposures to Kratom between January 2009 and 13. Between 2010 and 15, there were 660 calls to Kratom exposure. See, they're worried about, it's not that it's going up and it's an issue. It's just that it's going up. They're like, oh my God, more people are using this, which, depending on what they're using it for, is a good thing. I don't necessarily think it's a good thing to use it medicinally, but it's not a bad thing to use it medicinally neither. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm not going to say, well, you should go do it if, you don't want to, but if you're going to do it to replace something else, fucking do it to replace alcohol. I'd much rather be around somebody who was on Kratom than alcohol. And it's much better for your body. They can't go back and make alcohol legal because I do get it, but I don't. And when I say that, what I mean is I get why they do things, but I don't get how they're able to explain it to the public and people just accept that. So, meaning alcohol is legal and all this other shit is not. And how they continue to pass more laws. How many fucking laws do we need? I mean, it's like there are so many laws. They don't know how many laws there are, meaning the government. And we only got about 5 minutes left, so I want to make sure I get to this part. They claim there were 15 deaths. I mentioned that. And 9 in Sweden were not of the 15, but it was Kratom was laced with something else. And then of the other ones, they, of course, don't mention the fact that they were taking other shit. They did not die of Kratom. There's nobody who OD'd or took too much, and that's how they died. But they want people to think that. This is not a fucking public health emergency. But they're looking at it like, look at all this shit coming in. Look at how many people we can bust. Look at how much money we can get from this. Look at how this might cut into rehabs and doctors and shit we control. Especially now, they control doctors even more. And shit that we have on record, even though they probably have all your purchases on record anyway. And finding necessity of Schedule 1 placement to avoid imminent hazard to public safety. They're saying they're not involved in any medical use. They don't have anything that I see, and I didn't read the whole thing in detail. And I mentioned earlier they give 30 days because it's such an emergency. And you have businesses that their sole income or their sole, is from this, and their whole business is going to get shut down. For what? And you give 30-day notice? That is insane. And we have the right to do this because pursuant to section whatever, and if they can do it with something like Kratom, which is a natural plant that's not causing anything or any problems, it shows that they want to control every fucking thing. They want to control how you raise your kids. They want to control what you watch on TV. They want to control the fucking news. If they could, which they've tried and they probably will at some point, they'll control the internet. They'll control hate speech, speech in general. This is fucking bullshit. And too many people fall into this, just like they did with all the other drugs. You ask the average person today about heroin being legal, they'll think you're nuts, even though it was legal 100 years ago. Not only legal, but you could just walk into a store and buy it. They also call it an opioid. It is not an opioid, you fucking morons. But they're able to do this. And if it was anything else, I wouldn't comply. But it's hard not to comply if you can't get it. So if they cut off if the websites cut themselves off, which I think, if anything, they should go to the dark web and still operate. But then, they'll put you in jail for fucking 30 years. It's insane. And I'm tired of this shit. And people need to stand up and stop complying. And organize and tell these motherfuckers that, look, you don't own us. You may think that you own us. You don't own us. And if we want to put something in our body, it's none of your fucking business. And how we want to live our lives is none of your business. And what we talk about on the phone and on the internet and in text messages and all of this shit is none of your fucking business. And that's what it is. Yes, if you kill somebody, fine. You don't have the right to kill people. That's interfering with their freedom. If you steal from somebody, yeah. Everything else, government has no business. However, people can't think for themselves anymore. They need government to make their decisions. I don't know when people are going to learn. Does it have to become Nazi Germany before people realize what the fuck is going on? Now, you can look at this and just say, oh, that's just one little thing. It's just a little plant. But it's not. It's bigger than that. This is the culture of the U.S. This is how things work in the U.S. It's an oligarchy. And any freedoms that you do have aren't going to be there too much longer. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. That's all the time we have for tonight. And please sign the White House petition if you get a chance. I don't know that's going to do anything, but we'll see. And hopefully the lawyers of some of these companies can step up and do something. But it's not like a bill in Congress that you can call, your Congress people. Not that that makes a difference, but it's not something that can be stopped like that. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. I really appreciate it, and we'll be back next week.
Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Alpha Team report.
What's happening, Heather? Green light the asset.
Sir, I need more time.
We have no time. Are you going to give that order or not?
Sir, please.
You're too naive to see the truth. There's no bringing in Born.
We will defend these police officers.
listen to police officers' commands, listen to what we tell you, and just stop. The nation needs to realize that when we tell you to do something, do it. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, then the courts will figure it out.
We don't get to pick the laws, we enforce them. But at the end of the day, each and every member is to go home safe. Sometimes the use of force is necessary. You need to comply with the police officer the way the system was meant to be. Comply with the orders of police officers. Resisting arrest is a real and dangerous crime.
Nonpartisan Liberty for All. I'm your host, Dave Bourne, and it is September 1st, 2016. It is also the start of the football season. A bunch of games on tonight that I will not be watching. Actually, if UNLV is on TV, I don't know if they are. They're playing like Jacksonville State or somebody, or Jackson State or one of the CS teams. I will be watching that after the show. I know it started at 7, so they should just destroy them, but I'd like to see how they do and who they start at quarterback and whatever. But anyway, we are coming to you live from Las Vegas in Nevada. I'm wearing my I don't know if this is the home or away. I think home is colors and away is white. I don't know. I have my white Colin Kaepernick jersey on. And maybe I'll take a picture from the studio and post that later. But thank you for tuning in to Nonpartisan Liberty for All. We're on weeknights Tuesday through Thursday at 7 o'clock Pacific, 10 o'clock Eastern, and you can listen live on Spreaker.com and NonpartisanLibertyForAll.com, and to the archives immediately following the show on Spreaker, YouTube, Twitter, Tumblr, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. On Nonpartisan Liberty for All, we promote self-ownership and the ideas of true freedom and liberty, meaning being able to do whatever you want as long as you respect the freedom of others and don't directly interfere with their freedoms, exposing government for what it is, a mafia based on extortion that rules without consent by threat of force and violence. And we are happy to hear from you, and you can reach us by phone at 702-470-7664. That's 702-470-7664. You can also reach us via Skype at Nonpartisan Liberty for All one word, this in a way. Meaning that now they have another drug that they can go after. At the same time, they can, go after all, like they did this with synthetic marijuana. They actually even did it with places that stopped selling it when they made it illegal. So they took synthetic marijuana and they made it illegal, or bath salts or whatever it was. And it wouldn't have even been created in the first place if other drugs weren't legal. It's just ridiculous. They cause worse drugs to be created. The government, I'm saying, they cause worse drugs to be created. They cause people to do drugs that they wouldn't do. And yes, it's your own choice. You can't blame things on everybody else. But at the same time, it's, it does have an effect, meaning that if you take something like Kratom and, of course, ban it, it will lead to people doing other drugs. It's just a fact. If you get rid of something or make it harder to get something, it will lead to people doing something to replace that. Now, the thing with Kratom, it's in small doses. It's actually in the same family as coffee, believe it or not. And Thailand's the number one, I think, country that it comes from, but it's also, I know, in Bali, Indonesia, mostly Southeast Asia is where it's grown. But I'm sure they could figure out a way to grow it in the U.S. with all of the technology that's been developed when it comes to growing things. Now, I don't know how much that would cost or whatnot, and I don't know in what type of atmosphere, because like no one's growing opium here or growing coca leaves, but that might be because there's no need to. So it's just like something like crystal meth that started being made here. People realized, hey, we can make a drug here. We don't have to bring it in from other countries. So people that want to get high or want to get, and I'm not even saying that kratom gets you high, but it's there's going to be some kind of replacement, and we'll go into what people use it for in a second. But so it comes from countries, or it's grown mostly in countries in Southeast Asia, and they import it, of course, legally. Now, I did read in the DEA document that they issued something like they were holding up shipments of it, and they're using the fact that there's more and more being shipped into the United States as a reason. Know that some of them don't even sell it, and the ones that do, they don't seem to keep a lot on hand. So I think the biggest distribution is online, that there are a bunch of websites, and that's where the majority of people get it. It's the cheapest way to get it, because I know when I seen it at smoke shops, it's more expensive, and it's in pill form, but it's more expensive than if you got it online. Pretty much the same thing with everything is more expensive if you buy it at the store compared to online. And then most of when it comes to something like Kratom, they don't have a physical presence, so of course that is going to factor into the fact that you don't have to pay tax on it, so it makes it even cheaper as well. So I believe the majority of people would say, and even in videos that I've watched, because I've watched videos a while ago on it, and of course I watched some more the past couple of days, but the ones that I've watched in the past, everyone, pretty much got it online, unless I guess you need it right away or want it right away. But they have overnight, and a lot of them have free overnight and stuff like that. But if there's sites that are selling just Kratom, they're going to have to shut down. Now, there's a petition, whitehouse.gov, that I had posted, and I would recommend people sign. I don't think that's going to make a fucking difference. And now it's going to make anybody who has this is now a criminal, who could be hit with, I don't know, because marijuana is Schedule 1 too, and you just get a ticket in some states for only having a certain amount. So I don't know. It said in what they issued that, it would be the penalties of a Schedule 1 drug. Well, heroin's also a Schedule 1 drug too, and the penalties of possession of heroin are a lot different than the penalties of possession of marijuana. So if you're looking at it that way, I don't know what they would do, but it's just fucking ridiculous. It's another thing that the government is doing to take more control. Of course, it benefits the DEA. The fact that the DEA has any say in what drugs are illegal and what drugs are not, and it's not even I wouldn't even consider it a drug. They're making plants illegal. But the fact that they have any say in that is ridiculous, because it's a benefit to them. So when you look at it, it gives them more business, and that's the easiest way really to take it, as opposed to I've had it before. I've never had it in tea or water or anything like that. So I guess this was 2 days ago, Tuesday, the DEA announced that they were going to move it to a Schedule 1 drug. So you have something now that's been legal forever. It's never been illegal, but that's been sold for, I became aware of it a couple years ago, and I've seen videos that are on YouTube, that have been on YouTube, where it will say, 1 month or 1 year, or that for years, like in excess of 5 years have been on YouTube. So this is not anything new, and it's totally natural. And it's like I said, it's similar to marijuana. And I think really, and I'll go into the details of this, but there's too many people using it and getting a benefit out of it. So once something starts to build a following, and it may possibly cut into other things, the government has to go out and say, oh, we need to ban this. And the DEA is essentially, it might as well be the president, because the DEA is under the administrative branch. All the agencies are, from what I understand. Maybe there's an agency specific to Congress that has there's so many fucking agencies now. There's 17,000 law enforcement agencies alone, something like that. But I think that includes, police stations and whatever. But it's ridiculous that they can just on their own, and with the approval of the Attorney General, it doesn't have to get voted on. There's no law that has to be passed. They can give you 30 days notice and say, hey, we're shutting down your business, because there's businesses that, of course, sell Kratom. Now, most of them that I'm aware of, although I didn't look at a lot of the websites, they sell other stuff too. So I don't know if the other stuff is all related to Kratom, or it's stuff that can keep them in business if they stop selling Kratom. And of course, smoke shops, it's one small product. It's not going to shut down a smoke shop, but it may be a good source of income for them. But I don't think it's too big at when it comes to smoke shops. And you can check us out at nonpartisanlibertyforall.com, which has all the contact information, the number, and Skype username, as well as original articles, archives, and other things. And you can check out the series, the War on Drugs series, which actually pertains a lot to what we're talking about today. And I may add an article on today's show to there. I think there's 6 articles so far. I've been bad the last few weeks. I haven't added anything, but by the end, it's going to be a pretty big bunch of articles in that series there. So today we are going to talk all about Kratom, or Kratom is what I've heard other people pronounce it. I always pronounced it Kratom. I think it sounds better, but the masses, or the majority of people on YouTube, pronounce it Kratom. So however you want to call it, I guess it doesn't really fucking matter. But anyway, the DEA have on their own. Now, they need the Attorney General to approve, but I'm assuming the Attorney General has already said that they have approved this. It doesn't say on their they issued a document, and I'm going to be referring a little to that because it's a bunch of bullshit. And it mentions the Attorney General, but I'm assuming they wouldn't go through all of this if they didn't already know the Attorney General was going to approve it. So it's pretty fucked up. So those who don't know what Kratom is, first of all, it's a plant. And from what I understand, that what you get when you get Kratom is totally, it's just the plant ground up into powder. That's all it is. I don't believe there's any additional additives to it. There may be something to get it powdery or something like that, but it's nothing that, when you talk about drugs like cocaine and heroin, it goes through a whole big process. When you talk about Kratom, it's similar to marijuana. I mean, they're just taking the leaves and, grinding them up, really, and smoking them or breaking them up. And that's pretty much what happens, from what I understand with Kratom, is it's a powder, but it's like it's leaves turned into powder. And then you can either put it in a tea, you can put it in water, you can swallow it, I guess, like whole, but they sell pills, actually, of Kratom at smoke shops. So you can go and just buy the pill.